You are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are not the pain they gave you. Let me say it clear. Your past is not your prison. It's your classroom, but only if you stop living in it. Too many people drag their past into every conversation, every relationship, every decision like it's a ball and chain. But today, that ends. By the end of this message, you will stop looking backward. And finally, start moving forward with power, clarity, and freedom, because your past is a lesson, but it is not your limit. Let's go to work. You are not what happened to you. That's the lie the world tries to sell you. That because you were hurt, you must stay broken. Because you were left behind, you must not be worthy. Because you failed, you must be a failure. But let me tell you something they don't say often enough. Your past is not your identity. It's your initiation. We've all been through something, some more than others. But it's not the event that makes you. It's the meaning you attach to it. It's what you do with it, what you become because of it. There was a young woman I met at a seminar years ago. Maria grew up in a foster home, molested at 10, dropped out of high school. At 22, she was working 2 jobs and sleeping in a shelter. But do you know what she told me? She said, "Jim, I'm not a victim. I'm a seed, and I just haven't been watered yet." Now that's a mindset. That's a soul that refuses to let the past sit in the driver's seat. Today, she runs a nonprofit for young girls who went through what she did. She speaks, she builds, she loves, because she decided she was more than what happened. Now I want to bring you something from psychology that confirms this. There's a term, post-traumatic growth, not just survival, growth. You've heard of PTSD, but few talk about the flip side. How some people come out of hardship stronger, more resilient, more purposeful. Why? Because they refuse to let the pain become their personality. Your brain is always listening. And if all it hears is, "I'm broken, I'm not good enough, this always happens to me," then it builds your identity around that. It wires you to expect more of the same. But if you start saying, "I'm learning, I'm healing, I'm rising," then you create the chemistry for progress. You create new tracks in your mind for a new destination. You can't go forward if you keep building shrines to your past. That ex who left you, that friend who betrayed you, that parent who never believed in you, they were part of your story, yes, but they do not get to write your story. And maybe they took something from you, your innocence, your security, your sense of self. But hear me on this. What they did doesn't get to decide who you become. You do. So today is not about blame. It's about breakthrough. It's about standing up and saying, "That was a chapter, but it's not the book. That was a wound, but it's not the whole body. That was a fall, but it's not the end of climb." You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose next. And if you choose growth, choose responsibility, choose vision, there is nothing in your past that can stop the future waiting for you. The brain is a survival machine. It wasn't built to make you happy. It wasn't designed to help you grow. It was designed, plain and simple, to protect you, to keep you alive, to avoid pain, to stay in the known. But here's the catch. Everything you want lives on the other side of what your brain tells you to avoid. Let me explain. When you feel fear before speaking up, that's not weakness. That's your brain doing its job. When you hesitate before starting that business, walking into that gym, ending that toxic relationship, that's not laziness. That's your mind saying, "Wait, this is unfamiliar. This could be dangerous." The brain doesn't measure success. It measures risk. And to the ancient part of your brain, the part we all still carry from thousands of years ago, any discomfort, any challenge, any unknown equals risk. Now that's great if you're running from a lion. But if you're trying to change your life, it's a prison. There's a man I once coached. Smart, creative, big ideas. But every time he got close to success, really close, he'd sabotage it, pull back, disappear. One day I asked him, "Why do you think you do that?" He looked me in the eye and said, "Because if I never try fully, I can never fully fail." You see what happened there? His brain wasn't failing him. It was protecting him from shame, from disappointment, from rejection. But in doing so, it kept him small. That's the trade we all face. Safety or growth, protection or progress. Psychologists call it the comfort zone for a reason. It's where everything is familiar, but the familiar rarely changes your life. Growth starts the moment you step into uncertainty, and that's where most people stop. Now, here's the good news. The brain can be retrained. It's plastic, moldable, and every time you act in spite of fear, you're rewiring it. Every time you face discomfort and don't run, you're teaching your brain that the unknown isn't fatal, it's freedom. Think of Thomas Edison. Failed 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. His brain had the same wiring yours does, but he overrode it. He didn't seek protection. He pursued progress. That's what leaders do. That's what builders do. And that's what you can do. You got to understand this. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is a signal. It's the brain saying, this could hurt. And your job is to respond. Yes, but it could also change everything. So the next time your mind says, let's stay safe, you say, let's grow instead, because the brain may be wired to protect, but the spirit was made to rise. And your life, it will follow whichever one you listen to. Pain is real. Pain is sharp. It leaves marks, no question. But listen to me carefully. Pain is not a personality. It is not who you are. It is not your identity. It is something you experience, not something you have to become. But here's what happens. Someone gets hurt, rejected, abandoned, lied to, and slowly, they begin to wear it like a name tag. Hi, I'm the one who got cheated on. Hi, I'm the one who was never enough. Hi, I'm the one who failed. They don't say it out loud, but they think it, live it, breathe it. And before long, pain becomes their brand, their story, their explanation for why they play small, why they never trust, why they stay stuck. Now hear me. Your pain may explain your behavior, but it should never define your character. There's a woman I once worked with, Jessica. Beautiful soul. She was abused emotionally for years in a toxic relationship. When she finally left, you'd think she'd feel free. But instead, she clung to the trauma. It was her armor, her shield, her story. She kept saying, I just don't know who I am without that pain. And I told her something that shifted everything. Then now's the time to find out. Because when you identify with your wounds, you start expecting life to match them. You sabotage joy. You push away love. You distrust success. Why? Because pain has taken the wheel, and now it's driving the car. But pain was never meant to be the driver. It was meant to be the lesson. In psychology, we know this. Whatever you attach your identity to, your brain will protect, even if it's destructive, even if it's hurting you. So if you say, I'm broken, your mind goes, okay, let's keep that story intact. You'll reject anything that threatens to heal you, because healing would mean letting go of who you think you are. But you are not broken. You're becoming. You're not your wounds. You're the one who's walking through them. You're not the failure. You're the fighter. There's an old quote I love. Don't build a house in the place you were hurt. And yet, so many have done exactly that. They've taken up permanent residence in the memory of what broke them. But healing starts when you move out, when you say, that's where it happened, but it's not who I am. So let's make something clear. You are allowed to have felt pain, but you are not required to become it. You don't owe your trauma a lifetime of loyalty. You owe yourself a future, one that isn't built from the echoes of your past, but from the vision of who you were always meant to be. Because pain is a teacher, but it is not your name. And the day you stop calling it your identity is the day you start calling yourself free. History is not destiny. It's a record of where you've been, not a prophecy of where you're going. But too many people live like their past wrote the final chapter. Like because they've struggled, they're bound to stay stuck. Because their parents were poor, they'll never have wealth. Because they failed before, success must be off limits. That's a lie, a powerful one, a seductive one, but still a lie. You can't change the beginning, that's true. But you can change the ending if you decide to take the pen back from your past and start writing forward. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Chris. He grew up in a rough part of Detroit. Father in prison, mother addicted, By age 16, he'd been arrested 3 times. At 18, he stood in front of a judge who told him, "You're either going to be dead or back here within 5 years." Now that judge, he wasn't being cruel. He was looking at the data, the history, the pattern. But Chris made a decision most never do. He broke the pattern. Not because it was easy, but because he was tired being told who he was based on what came before. He got clean. He read every book he could find. He started speaking at schools, mentoring kids who looked just like him. And one day, years later, he stood on a TEDx stage with that same judge in the audience and said, "I am not my history. I am my decision." Now that is power. Because the truth is, your history is just information. It's what you do with that information that makes it your identity or your transformation. Psychologically, it's called learned helplessness. When people experience enough setbacks, they start to believe they're powerless. Even when the door is open, they don't walk through it because they believe they're still locked in. But belief is not reality. Belief is a choice. And if your beliefs have been shaped by pain, failure, rejection, then it's time to reshape them by vision, purpose, and action. You've heard people say, it runs in the family, but so does change. So does growth. So does a decision to be the one who ends a cycle. Your father may have been absent. Your mother may have struggled. Your friends may have doubted you. But none of that determines what's possible for you, unless you give it permission. Let's make this simple. History is a mirror, but you don't have to keep staring at it. The windshield is bigger than the rear view for a reason, because where you're going is far more important than where you've been. So don't let your past become your prison. Let it become your proof that if you made it through that, you can make it to anything. Because history, that's what happened. But destiny, that's what you choose. There comes a moment when you've got to stop taking orders from the version of you that made the mess. You know the one, the version of you that was driven by fear, by doubt, by comfort, the version of you that avoided hard conversations, skipped the gym, blamed others, stayed quiet, procrastinated, settled. That person, let's call them your old self, they were doing the best they knew how at the time, but they do not get to lead your life anymore. The problem is, most people evolve physically, but keep their mental loyalty to the person they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, sometimes even longer. They get new goals but obey old habits, new dreams, but listen to the same tired voice in their head saying, "Play it safe. You always quit. You'll never make it." It's like installing a new operating system but still running commands from Windows 98. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man named Elijah. At 22, he was lazy, broke, addicted to video games, and full of excuses. But something in him snapped after his girlfriend left. His job let him go, and his roommate kicked him out. He decided to change. Started working out, got therapy, built a business, got his finances right. But then came the test. Success started knocking. Speaking gigs, partnerships, real opportunities. And guess what happened? He almost sabotaged it. Why? Because every time he reached for the next level, he was still taking orders from his old self. The one who didn't believe he was worthy. The one who said, "Don't speak up, don't stand out, don't try too hard." That voice didn't vanish. It got quieter, but not gone. And that's the part nobody tells you. Growth doesn't eliminate the old voice. It just demands you stop giving it power. Psychologists call it self-concept lag. That means your identity is still catching up to the changes you've made. You've leveled up, but you're still acting like the version of you that couldn't handle responsibility. But let me tell you something. You don't owe your old self anything but a thank you for getting you this far and a goodbye. Because the moment you stop taking orders from your old self is the moment your new self gets to lead. And that's the version with vision, with discipline, with boundaries, with faith. It's okay to remember who you were, but never confuse that with who you are becoming. So here's the decision. Will you let the voice of your past write the script of your future? Or will you step into the uncomfortable power of becoming someone your old self would have never even recognized? Because greatness doesn't come when you feel ready. It comes when you stop obeying the version of you that never will be. and you say, "From now on, I follow the one I'm becoming." Emotion buried alive stays alive. That's not just a quote. It's a warning. See, when you suppress pain, it doesn't dissolve. It waits. When you ignore grief, it doesn't fade. It lingers. When you act like the betrayal didn't hurt, it doesn't heal. It festers. And the longer you avoid it, the louder it becomes. Not in words, but in patterns, in self-sabotage, in anger at the wrong people, in fear of success, in trust issues, perfectionism, procrastination, yes, even laziness. We like to pretend we're okay. Slap a smile on a scar. Work harder. Talk tougher. Numb it with distractions. Food, work, entertainment, achievement. But what we never admit is this. It's not the workload that's exhausting you. It's the emotional weight you never laid down. Let me tell you a story. A woman named Dana was one of the most disciplined professionals I ever met. Top performer. Always early. Always sharp. But inside, she was angry. Always on edge. Couldn't sleep. No joy. She didn't understand why. So she went to a coach. They didn't talk about work. They talked about her father, who left when she was 9. The therapist asked, "Have you ever really grieved that?" Dana laughed it off. That was years ago. I'm over it. But she wasn't. She'd buried it so deep, she mistook it for personality. She didn't realize the control issues, the need to always be strong, the fear of being vulnerable, all came from that little girl who never got to say, "It hurt." Psychologists call it emotional suppression. When a memory or feeling is too painful to process, we push it down. But suppression is not deletion. It's just storage, and it always collects interest. Here's the truth. What you refuse to feel, you unconsciously act out. You push people away because someone once left. You overwork because you don't feel enough. You fear success because you think you'll lose it, like you lost everything else. But here's the good news. What's buried doesn't have to stay buried. Healing doesn't start when you get over it. Healing starts when you face it. That doesn't mean drowning in your past. It means acknowledging it without letting it define you. Say it hurt. Say it disappointed you. Say it scared you. And then release it. You don't heal by pretending you were never wounded. You heal by letting the wound speak, then stop leading. See, your emotions aren't the enemy. They're messengers. But if you silence them too long, they start screaming through your behavior. So give yourself permission, not to collapse, but to confront. Because emotion buried alive doesn't just stay alive. It runs your life in silence. But once it's faced, once it's honored, once it's released, it frees you, and you're no longer a prisoner of pain. You become the author of healing. Everyone has good intentions. But intentions don't build a life. Patterns do. You can intend to wake up early, but if your pattern is hitting snooze 10 times, you'll sleep through your potential. You can intend to save money, but if your pattern is emotional spending every time you're stressed, your bank account will still bleed. You can intend to speak kindly, but if your pattern is reacting with sarcasm and defensiveness, relationships will continue to suffer. Let me give it to you straight. Patterns are the real you, not the promises you make when you're inspired, but the behaviors you repeat when no one's watching. It's easy to say, "I want to change." But here's the test. Are you willing to interrupt the pattern that's been quietly robbing you of your progress? Take a man I once coached. Let's call him Steven. Every January, he'd write out these grand goals. Get fit, fix his marriage, build his business. His intentions were golden. But by March, he was right back in the same rut, skipping workouts, arguing with his wife, procrastinating on his business. Why? Because Steven had rituals, not goals. A ritual of stress eating. A ritual of going quiet instead of resolving conflict. A ritual of scrolling social media to escape responsibility. His patterns were silently stronger than his desire. Psychology backs this up. Habits are formed through repetition. Neural pathways get reinforced like grooves in a record. The more you do it, the deeper it gets. That's why change feels so hard. You're not just making a new choice. You're fighting an old autopilot. And unless you disrupt the loop, you stay locked in. You ever wonder why people with the best plans still fail? It's because plans live on paper. Patterns live in the body, in your nervous system, in your routines, in your environment. Here's what I've learned. You can't outperform your rituals. You rise or fall to the level of your patterns. But here's the encouraging part. You can rewire them. Start with one. Just one. Replace 30 minutes of phone scrolling in the morning with silence and strategy. Replace snapping at your spouse with a deep breath and a better question. Replace complaining with commitment. Small hinges swing big doors. And remember, patterns are neutral. They don't care whether they build you or break you, but you should. So take inventory. What are you rehearsing daily? Doubt or discipline? Fear or faith? Avoidance or action? Because at the end of the day, you won't be remembered for what you meant to do. You'll be remembered for what you repeated. Patterns are the bricks. Your life is the house. So choose wisely what you lay down, because you're not building a moment. You're building a legacy. The world doesn't care about your past nearly as much as you do. People respond to your energy, your presence, your results, not your resume of regret. You could have failed yesterday, been broke last year, invisible for a decade, but if you become someone different today, the world takes notice. Now, that's not to say your past is meaningless. No, your past is your classroom, but it's not your identity. It's not your destiny. The danger is thinking that because you were overlooked, rejected, insecure, addicted, betrayed, that somehow you are those things forever. But listen to me closely. The world doesn't reward what you've been through. It rewards what you've built through it. I remember a man who spent 12 years in and out of prison. No one gave him a shot. He was labeled by the system, judged by society, dismissed by most. But when he got out the last time, he did something most people don't. He changed. He read every day, learned a trade, served others, spoke at youth centers, and eventually he built a company that employed at-risk teens. Today, he's a leader in his community. Why? Because the world started responding to who he became. Your transformation is louder than your reputation. That's how life works. You could have 1,000 stories of pain, but unless you transform that pain into power, the world doesn't owe you applause. What will respond to is your growth, your decisions, your value. Psychologists say our brains form identities based on repeated experiences. That means if you've been told you're not enough, you internalize it. It becomes your script. You carry it into relationships, into opportunities, into the mirror. But here's the liberating truth. Identity is malleable. You can outgrow your former self the same way a snake sheds its skin. Not because it hates its past, but because it's outlived it. The version of you who made those mistakes, they didn't know what you know now. So stop arguing for your limitations. Stop telling the story of who hurt you and start living the story of who you're becoming. Because the world is watching something far more powerful than your pain. It's watching your pattern of progress. You want respect? Become respectable. You want love? Become lovable. You want wealth? Become valuable. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's alignment. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't need to beg for a new beginning. You become one. Every choice you make to rise above your history shifts your future. Every action taken in character, not comfort, reshapes how the world sees you. Remember, the mirror reflects your past, but your decisions reflect your future. So don't beg the world to understand your pain. Stand up, build yourself, because the world won't respond to who you were. It will move for who you become. If you don't choose your future, your past will. And what's powerful about this is that it's true for everyone, no matter who you are. We all have a past, don't we? Some of it's filled with success, and some of it's filled with regret, mistakes, or missed opportunities. But here's the truth that most people don't realize. The past doesn't dictate the future unless you let it. Every day you have a choice to either move forward or to be anchored to the weight of what's already happened. The decisions you make today shape who you'll be tomorrow. You can't change yesterday, but you can choose who you'll become next. Let me tell you about a man named Tom. Tom grew up with nothing. No money, no connections, no real role models. And he had plenty of reasons to fail. He could have blamed his circumstances. He could have stayed stuck in the same old pattern of doubt and hopelessness that many others get trapped in. But Tom made a decision. He would not be defined by his past. He didn't let it drag him down. Instead, he chose to rewrite his story. Tom made the decision to learn every single day. He chose to show up, to take action, to create something new, even when the past kept whispering, "You're not good enough. You're not worth it." And guess what? The more Tom chose his future, the less his past had a hold on him. He turned his life around by choosing to see what was possible instead of what was behind him. This is the most important part. The past doesn't own you unless you let it. And far too many people live out their lives with the shadow of their past looming over them, making decisions based on what was, not what can be. And when you do that, you're not living, you're surviving. You're reacting to life instead of creating it. You see, the mind is an incredible thing. It doesn't distinguish between something that happened 10 years ago and something that happened 10 minutes ago. Your subconscious stores everything. So, when you carry the pain of your past without confronting it, your future is shaped by that pain. It becomes a lens through which you see every opportunity. And suddenly, you start making choices that reflect what you've always known: failure, fear, limitation. But here's where the breakthrough happens. When you choose your future, you step into possibility. You choose to believe in what's next, not what's behind. You make decisions from a place of empowerment, not a place of victimhood. And the most amazing part? When you stop identifying with the past, you start creating something brand new. This is what I want you to understand. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. If you don't take control of your future, you'll stay stuck in the old patterns that your past created for you. But if you choose to step into the unknown, if you choose to move forward, you'll create a future that is defined not by your history, but by your courage to change it. So ask yourself, what are you choosing today? Are you choosing to stay the same? Or are you choosing the future that's waiting for you to claim it? The truth is simple. If you don't choose your future, your past will. It will keep you stuck, forever reliving the same story. But when you take the reins of your life, the future is yours to create. The choice is yours. Your past is a story that shaped you, but your future is a story that will define you. Write it with courage.